Hey everybody, welcome to the Wands and Daggers show. I'm David, this is my good friend Dan, and today on Wands and Daggers we're going to be talking about how to make your game that much creepier by using some interesting descriptions.
Yeah, definitely. So this is something I've actually given a lot of thought to recently, especially with it, Halloween's right around the corner for us, here for you. One of the things that I have figured out works quite well without having to make all new creatures is just looking at the way certain creatures are portrayed or described and things like that, and just sort of twisting the language you use on them. So, instead of describing, a creature one way, you could describe one, and I'm curious if you pick up what I'm going to describe right now.
Okay.
Describing a creature as this almost vaguely humanoid-looking creature with gangly sort of arms and legs, but an almost bulbous, green, oily body, with a sort of rotund head, and just the smile's just way too wide as it looks you in the eyes and mumbles, "Surrender."
I gotta be honest, I got no idea what that is.
Also known as a frogman or a bullywug.
Ah!
Just with that little bit of a change in your description, you can really easily change the feel and the mood that a certain creature's presence gives.
Yeah, if I was describing a bullywug showing up, I'd be like, so this frog dude shows up with a spear.
So really just with changing that tiny little bit of description, the way that you describe a creature, you can really change the mood that a certain creature's presence gives. Like you said, you would describe it as you see this frog guy with a spear come out, and yeah, sure, cool, fantasy creature. But if you're trying to do a sort of a more scary scenario, changing it to that sort of like, well, it looks human, but it's got these weird proportions that it's technically not wrong. It's just, it's different. It's not what you would expect, and it really changes that mood.
Yeah, I definitely think that can set you on edge, even especially if you are used to running into a specific creature, right? But all of a sudden the DM starts describing it, and so it's not like, oh yeah, I fought this creature 1,000 times, because somehow the DM's describing it in a way you've never envisioned it before. I know that if I was in the middle of a campaign and my DM's just like, 3 goblins pop up, I'm not scared. They're goblins. I've killed thousands of goblins. But if my DM starts describing them in a new way and then they pop out, even though they're a creature that I fought before, suddenly he's highlighting these aspects of them that maybe I hadn't imagined in previous fights, and maybe he's going to help bring that out during the combat, and it's going to be a much scarier version of a monster that really didn't even change a lot of stats, but all of a sudden this monster that I fought before is scarier than it normally is.
Probably the big thing for how effective it is as well is just changing that little bit of description, even without changing, well, any of the stats. Even sometimes you can really make a combat so much more tense, even if it's a creature the players have technically fought before. They just don't realize it because you've described it in this very specific kind of way. And you can do it in all sorts of ways. You can make a creature that's supposed to be terrifying look cute and cuddly by comparison, by changing the description as well. You really have a lot more control over it than you sometimes give yourself credit for. I know I'm quite guilty of, when I'm trying to do a scary session, I'll just pull up a scary picture of a thing and then apply stats from something else to it. But I think it's almost more rewarding from a player perspective if you're fighting this creature in not even necessarily a long form campaign, and he describes it in this certain way, and then later on you show them the same creature again but described in a different way, and they make that connection that, oh hey, this is what we fought before, we know how to deal with this, and it gives that sort of connection without just saying, here is scary thing. Your character is scared.
So, you've convinced me that maybe I should be upgrading my describing in my games. But let's say I suck at it. What do I do?
Not everyone's going to be amazing at doing these sort of descriptions. So if you're not the kind of person that can really on the fly give this cool sort of mysterious description to a creature, you might want to make sure that when you're planning out ahead, even if you have to write something down, you maybe look online for some descriptive words and things like that you can use as an alternative to what you would normally use or what you think of.
So maybe like finding a list of synonyms for words that you would normally describe a creature.
Yeah, exactly. And like write up a description for this creature for you to reference to in game, just so that you don't necessarily have to rely on winging it. You've got that plan ahead of time, and you can slowly work towards, as you use these things more often, you can work towards being able to do that more on the fly.
So it sounds like if someone were to start doing this more often, they might start to accumulate a list of words they normally use to describe things, and they would improve their vocabulary of descriptions as they get more into this. So maybe this is something that even if you start tomorrow, your next session isn't going to be that much better, but you'll get better at it as you keep working at it. So let's say you're running a campaign and you're doing this description thing up to 11, and you're thinking, okay, I want to have one scene where I describe a creature, and I want the players to run into that same creature again in the future, but I want to use descriptions to make something interesting about the second encounter with that creature. Even though it's the same creature, but maybe under different conditions, you just describe it a little bit different. How would you do that?
That's a fair question. So, I suppose obviously it depends on the kind of situation you're talking about. What comes to mind would be something like, say, running into a proud orc warrior in the middle of the day, but later it's a bit shadier, and maybe it's at night, and you see him in the distance. So I think description one could be something to give that more open description of it. You see this this tall, broad-shouldered, proud orc warrior with plenty of battle scars, the sun glistening off of his half-plate armor. As he steps towards you, hand on hilt, he looks you in the eye, ready to challenge. And then a second description, they're wandering through the town at night, some time later after potentially defeating this warrior who's become... they may have even heard he's been talked down to for his defeat because he lost to some puny humans or whatever your players are. So some night they're traveling through the city, and you describe to them how as they're walking through, they glance down an alleyway to the side, and they see something that just for a second looks a bit off. They see what looks like some sort of human-shaped figures stepping towards them in the shadows. The movements are full of intent, but you almost can't quite tell what you're looking at. And as this individual steps through the shafts of moonlight, you see battle scars illuminated on his face in that pale moonlight, and he looks ready to kill.
Anyways, that's been our video on creepy descriptions and how to use them. Thanks for watching. Come check out our next video, and until then, we'll see you.